Hey everybody, Phil from Checkerboard Kids here. Hey, that theme music can only mean one thing. It's time for the one and only...
Suzanne, beware of the devil. Don't let him spoil your heart.
Yes, it's time for Suzanne, Beware of the Devil with Suzanne Muldowneys. Let's give it up for Suzanne Muldowneys. Hey Suzanne, happy holidays.
Yes.
And Merry Christmas.
Well, I don't think all our viewers are Christians. There could be some Jewish people. Happy Hanukkah to anyone watching who may be Jewish.
Sure. And there's people that might be Muslim and they might be celebrating Eid.
Eid?
Eid, yeah, it's a kind of a Muslim holiday.
I never learned about that.
Okay, well, they're you know what? They're doing it in school now, and we get Eid off, so that's kind of cool.
Well, see, when I was in 6th grade, my classmates put on a pageant about traditions at this time of year for Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Mm-hmm. We finished by saying, so all these 3 sects worshiping the same God,
wow.
Even though the Muslims call him Allah, want to wish all of you happy holidays.
Right on, Suzanne. Well, well done. And of course, there's Kwanzaa, and there's a whole bunch of other cool holidays, all kind of falling down around that time. So good stuff, Suzanne. Good. There's peace on earth and goodwill towards man, right?
Yes.
So, but what will you be telling us about today? Kind of schooling us about today.
For maybe about 200 years, I don't know how much longer, North America, I can't be sure how many other countries in other parts of the world, has made unpardonable mistakes by focusing too much time and attention on someone other than Jesus, whose birthday is the reason for Christmas.
Okay. So what do you mean? Clarification. Point of clarification, please.
I'm sure countless people in North America are aware that I mean Santa Claus.
Santa Claus. Ah, yes, Santa Claus is coming to town and all of that. You better not, shout or, complain.
You better watch out. You better not cry.
Okay. Or else.
Or somehow you'll be made to suffer.
Well, here's hoping not.
Now, see, cameraman, can you? Okay, good. This is the real Saint Nicholas, who lived in the 4th or 5th century A.D.
He was Greek, right? Was he Greek?
No, he was Dutch.
Dutch? Okay, I did not know.
All right, he gained popularity by giving money to the poor and the less fortunate of his immediate area.
I'll take that off your hands. Okay. Yeah? Because I always thought there was always I think it was a Greek thing, Nicholas, because, it's a kind of a Greek name. He was like sainted because he did many different things, and one of the things he was doing is always giving gifts and charitable things. And there was always a story about the 3 daughters who they didn't have enough money for dowries, and what he would do is he took sacks of gold and he would throw it down the chimney while the girls were drying their stockings, and the gold would go into their stockings, and it was kind of like that's where that whole stocking thing came from. And in fact, if you know the symbol for it, St. Nicholas is the patron saint of pawn shops. For real, because if you know the symbol of the three gold balls.
Gold balls.
Yeah, that signifies the 3 bags of gold that he threw down the chimneys for the daughters.
I never learned about his throwing gold to the daughters, but I did hear about his giving money to some unfortunate entity and telling them, don't tell anybody that I did this.
Okay, so he didn't want to snitch himself out, but then why does everybody give gifts and then say Santa did it?
The real reason for giving gifts goes back to the story of the Magi at Jesus' birth.
Ah, the gift of the Magi.
Well, the threefold gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh.
So those are, yeah, okay.
As for saying that Santa Claus brings the presents, well, that's one way that a fictional image has been blown out of proportion.
Okay. Preach on. Tell me some more.
Three main faults in fostering Santa the way we always have are over-importance, false godhood, and inconsistencies.
Okay, show me.
All right, from the moment Halloween is over, or sometimes even as early as July, since some TV channels have Christmas in July programs, numberless stores start displaying their Christmas merchandise, and in doing so, they confront the public with abundant, ubiquitous representations of Santa Claus. From animated figurines to his likeness on packaging, to signs, to commercials for goods which show him, the average citizen cannot go about his or her daily business without encountering some Santa representation.
So they're inundated with Santa-ness, and especially people dressed as Santa ringing bells for money.
Yes.
Salvation, and that's the Salvation Army. Their thing is blood and fire. That's their motto, for real.
Well, I know the Salvation Army rings bells for soliciting money, but how do you know Santa Claus does it in that same group's behalf?
Oh yeah, you're right. Usually they're wearing the kind of their outfits.
They're wearing their traditional Santa costumes, not Salvation Army uniforms.
You're right. You're right. I take that back. I don't know what I'm talking about, so I'm a jackass. But continue on.
Now, there are numberless commercials showing Santa in them. Most of them are for retail merchandise, but others for upcoming Christmas concerts show Santa interacting with the musicians. Commercials for musical albums sometimes have many costumed Santas in bunches. Commercials for holiday-oriented movies reveal that Santa is part of their plots, even the key figure. Commercials for restaurants that are open for Christmas Day stress that Santa will appear live in these establishments. Even commercials shown after Christmas Day for weight loss programs.
What?
Engage Santa in them.
What? Well, wait a second. Isn't Santa always depicted as a jolly, like, larger fellow? I'm not trying to body shame him.
Obese.
Okay. You can call him obese. Fine. I'll just call him
Fat.
Can I say he's like overly chubby? Okay. Call him what you will. But the main point is, really, weight loss programs? Weight loss programs are trying to jack.
I've seen them.
Trying to jack Santa? That's ridiculous. All right. Well, maybe they're doing this because they could use Santa as a figure that everybody loves, but they don't want to really talk about Jesus because, Jesus was only baby Jesus back then and it wasn't as popular. Or like what? What's your thinking on this?
Well, it's making Santa over-important. Once a household decides that it's time to start planning for the next Christmas, the parents immediately confront their children, even when the children know nothing about Christmas and are going through it for the first time, with Santa Claus instead of the real focal point.
Which is?
Jesus.
So they're saying, you better be good because Santa is going to come here. It's kind of blackmailing them. You better be good or else.
Or like a boogeyman? A boogeyman is a traditional concealed character who supposedly comes out to menace children. The parents emphasize him as a figure of horror.
So this is like the opposite of that. You're not going to get presents. You're not going to be visited by Santa if you are bad.
Beginning at Thanksgiving,
the science doesn't meet it out. It's not true.
Sorry,
just in case anybody was listening that didn't know. Spoilers.
Beginning at Thanksgiving Day, and sometimes just before it, and continuing up until Christmas, when major parades are held, they are always topped off by the alleged real, honest-to-goodness Santa Claus. These parades forbid the participants in preparing their entries and themes to include a Santa in their plans. Instead, there's to be only the one Santa at the end of every parade.
The one true Santa.
How do they determine who's going to play the part? Christmas parades that are made into competitions, award trophies and other things, topped with Santa figurines or other Santa representative artwork.
Yeah, and then there's that Santa run where everybody dresses as Santa and they go running around. You know, there's things like that going on there and causing all sorts of chaos. But maybe Santa is the representation not of the kind of the religious aspect of Christmas, but the commercial aspect of Christmas.
Numberless generations are guilty of placing first attention, efforts, hype, and energy on Santa, not on Jesus. We do not focus equal time, energy, or hype on Jesus that we do with Santa. It must be remembered that the purpose of the holiday known as Christmas is to honor and commemorate the birth of Jesus Christ. Though society tries to do away with the religious element, it cannot ignore the historic element. We must remember other holidays rooted in honoring the births of people in history, even if those people were not divine. Now, an excellent example is Martin Luther King, Jr. He was a cleric, but he was not divine.
He was a cleric.
But we still celebrate his birthday every year. But most importantly, we do not misdirect time or attention on someone else.
Or somebody like totally mythical sort of situation like Santa Claus, because that's kind of like, he's like a magic user as opposed to, you know, the cleric. Just, yeah. No?
Well, we make someone other than the honoree excessively important.
Okay.
We must also remember that the word Christmas is in honor of Christ. Jesus lived centuries before the real St. Nicholas did. We do not call the holiday Nicholas, Santamus, or Santa Clausmas.
Santa Clausmas.
All right, now let's get into the subject of false godhood.
Okay, false godhood. Yes.
When we make any topic excessively important, making it figure into all walks of life, making it supposedly omnipotent, and coercing other people to regard it as all important to the extent that we admire it too much, we make that topic a false god.
All right, so omnipotent, right? That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Examples? Do you have any examples that we could use illustrate making people into false gods?
Well, one example I can think of over glorifying a dead person was with Elvis Presley.
Okay.
For 30 years after his death, people glorified him and made a fuss about him every year on the anniversary of his death, and yet many much greater artists like Bing Crosby, Mary Costa, Zero Mostel, Groucho Marx, when those people died, they were dismissed very briefly.
Well, maybe because certain aspects of certain music, like these people were all actors or things like that, but certain aspects of music, like say, for example, Mozart, people were really into Mozart, like for real, right? And still are into him now. Beethoven still, and maybe people are into Elvis. I mean, he was a hero to most, but, you know, just throwing it out there.
Remember the first commandment. It expressly forbids creating false gods. I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not have any other gods before me. Again, even though religion may not be the priority, one must not forget the historic and perhaps the social significance.
All right. Well, say for example, like say, you know, not having any gods before me. I mean, not considering people like godsy God, but saying like, all right, I have God. You know, I have God in my life. I believe in God. You know, I dig some Jesus and stuff like that. But then, you know, there's other people that I really like you know, various different music groups or like Marcy or like whatever singer people are into. For me, you know. So dig that, and then, you know, that's okay, right? Because I'm keeping it over here and not like putting it higher than God, right?
Well, by making Santa Claus the center of attention in all the aforementioned ways and examples, we have made him a false god.
Oh.
Well, we tell the children that Santa can make any wish come true, with the result that some children wish for extraordinary deeds or impractical presents because, oh, he can do anything.
Like
He's Santa Claus.
Like I want a pony.
Yes.
So that's when the people always say, I want a pony, and you don't get a pony, and then you're like, Santa, let me down. Ugh. It just teaches kids to have these improbable wants or dreams. Like, you want a pony? No, seriously, if you really want a pony, work hard your life, factor in getting a pony, taking care of a pony, brushing a pony, and doing all that stuff, and you could have a pony if you work for it. Make sense?
Yes. Well, another way we make Santa a false god is by making him, not Jesus, the focal point of holiday parades. I've said earlier that there's only the one Santa permitted at the very end of the parade. A great many entries prepare their themes knowing nothing about the identities or intentions of the other entries, with the result that there can be some duplicate themes. But when a nativity tableau is a Christmas parade entry, and sometimes there can be more than one nativity tableau among different entries, it is not given the red carpet treatment or newspaper, radio, TV coverage that Santa Claus is given.
Maybe because it doesn't feel as threatening. I mean, people are like, you know, you're talking about Jesus here. Yo, he died. Like, you know, the Santa Claus, everybody's like, Santa Claus, yay, give gifts. Jesus, like, died. You know, that
he rose.
He did raise too, but, you know, he suffered and went through a lot of stuff.
Well, when we have our newborn children christened, we pledge them to God. Yet in time, we brainwash them about Santa Claus before we've taught them the first thing about God or Jesus.
I wonder why that is.
Because I remember looking at pictures in my family's photo album. The first time I celebrated Christmas, I was still a baby. I was only 4.5 months.
Right.
But then the next year, I was a year older. I was coming down some stairs, and then there was this big Santa Claus punching bag at the foot of the stairs. And I didn't see a nativity set anywhere.
And your family's pretty religious, right?
Well, they were not only religious, they were also fanatic and zealous about telling the truth.
But Santa Claus, though.
Well, that comes along later. They really made a grievous error.
Did they do Easter Bunny too?
Yes, but not to the intensity or extremes that they do with Santa Claus. There is no law inscribed in stone that children must believe in Santa as though he were God. But we make Santa a compulsion, not an option. Remember, I think it's Mark's gospel. You teach and enforce man-made traditions and myths and superstitions as though they were God's laws.
No, that sounds pretty
We
on the
force
nose
our
there.
children to go along with the concept of Santa without giving them a choice. It's like when we first feed our babies solid food. We, the grown-ups, not the babies, decide what those foods will be, and we expect the babies to consume every bit. If the baby refuses to eat the food, probably because it doesn't like the taste, but cannot yet speak for itself, the parents are intolerant of the baby's refusal. In time, even when our children can speak for themselves, we compel them to eat foods they do not like because you must eat whatever is put in front of you. You must clean your plate. It's good for you. In the case of Santa, we impose him on children and give them no choice. We force them to go along blindly.
Right, and if people try to, you know, spoiler alert, to go to other kids and say, hey, there is no Santa, and then kids freak out. They get angry. Parents get mad. They start yelling at teachers. Why'd you let this kid, like, you know, mess up our child's mind by saying there's no Santa Claus? But the science doesn't weigh out.
Probably the worst way that we make Santa a false god is by telling children that he monitors their behavior and keeps records 24/7, 365. This concept can be frightening when children are hearing of Santa and Christmas for the first time, and especially when they are under pressure from the grown-ups always to be good. Consider how the familiar carol, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, makes him seem to be a boogeyman rather than a nice guy or jolly old elf. Consider the song's very first phrases. You better watch out. You better not cry. You better not pout. I'm telling you why. The lyrics go on from there to emphasize that Santa is making a list and checking it twice. Who's naughty or nice? He knows if you've been bad or good. And then finish with those same opening threats. So
good
children
for
can
goodness sakes.
be easily intimidated at the idea that someone is watching them and checking up on them every minute. Well, my parents were severe, intolerant of my slightest mistakes, and abusing me for them.
What? What do you mean?
They slapped me. They rammed me against a wall. They beat me up. I had a hard enough time reckoning with them alone without having to worry about someone else allegedly observing me every minute and then totaling the score at a certain time. My parents kept behavior charts, which accumulated only negative,
So they
never
were
positive points, with punishments being administered upon reaching certain numbers of negative points. I was told that Santa, too, kept charts that way. What chance did I have of getting any presents when I apparently was so bad all year round? And once I started school, the teachers and principals also kept academic and behavior records to betray me to my parents when I had poor grades or when they felt I wasn't behaving the right way. When I was made to visit the resident store Santa, I was afraid to see him because I had been told that he saw everything, knew everything, and remembered everything about me. I might as well have been facing the school principal, a priest in the confessional, or worse, God on Judgment Day.
Oh my goodness.
Children have their hands full all year round, being checked up on by parents, relatives, clerics, and teachers without having to reckon with an alleged additional entity at Christmas.
Wow. Okay, so what are you advising? You advise that, you know, kids, parents disabuse your kids of these myths? It's hard. The brainwashing has been very ingrained, very deeply here.
Well, it's also a very serious inconsistency. Well, wait. Finally, we make Santa a false god by convincing children that he can accomplish anything. But earlier we said, as a result, children might make impossible wishes. Moreover, by telling children he can do anything, we have to make up excuses, such as why Santa succeeds with his gift deliveries even in adverse weather or travel conditions that could seriously delay or thwart Grandpa or Aunt Connie or Uncle Mike from visiting on Christmas Day.
Right. So it's like Santa has this ability, and he's being pulled by a sleigh of magic reindeer. It's the science doesn't weigh out.
Perpetuating Santa in the traditional ways makes us guilty of deeds that we say we must never do, or that we tell our children they must never do.
So like lying, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Here, we teach our children not to lie, yet we deceive them about Santa's existence.
It's a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy, I say.
The 8th commandment expressly forbids lying, though the traditional wording is, "Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor." In my first grade religion book, it was reworded to read, "You shall not tell lies." Thus, in a minimum of words, lying is forbidden. However, we bend the rules for our own benefit, saying that fooling children about Santa is just a little white lie. They have to have something to believe in. The commandment states what is and what is not allowed in a minimum of words. The 8th commandment does not expand to make exceptions for what we call white lies.
So, yeah, any lie on any level is just bad.
As for needing something to believe in, children should be told the truth about Christ's birth and about the real St. Nicholas, and that the traditional Santa Claus is only a put-on, a fictional image blown out of proportion.
For commercial reasons, just throwing it out there.
Well, my parents were fanatical about always telling the truth. I was very angry when I found out I had been deceived.
When did you find out? How was it?
When I was 8 years old, in the 3rd grade. Since I had been subjected to many ordeals, many ordeals. From when I could first understand others' speech, I had been under the impression that children alone made mistakes, did wrong, or committed sin. Grown-ups were perfect. But now, my parents had been dishonest with me when they were such fanatics about always telling the truth.
So it's hypocritical.
My parents had been dishonest. They had sinned. When I complained to them, they denied having lied and weighed me down with excuses and justifications. Moreover, in time, when I found it necessary to tell white lies, my parents did not tolerate it when they expected me to tolerate anything that they did. And they were the ones who set the example.
All right.
Remember that when we have our children christened, we are made to renew our own baptismal vows, the first of which is the renunciation of sin. Yet, in time, we willfully commit sin by deceiving our children about Santa. We are dishonest, yet we are intolerant of any dishonesty on the children's parts. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive.
Okay.
In deceiving children about Santa, we can become entangled in our own lies when we have to explain why he is in a store or mall interacting with children one minute, and then out on the street soliciting funds the next minute. How did he get from the store to the street so fast?
And he looks different, too.
Yeah, when our children watch 2 or more simultaneous Thanksgiving parades on TV, and the Santas appear at the ends of those parades pretty much simultaneously, how does he commute among all those different sights so fast? When he delivers the presents on Christmas Eve, how does he get into the house without a key when there is no chimney and all the doors and windows are locked? How can he bring in the items and leave them there without making noise and waking us up? How can he pack megatons of items and leave them there in that one very compact sleigh?
I'm just saying, bag of holding, he's a magic user, right?
What?
Bag of holding. All right, continue on. I'm curious.
And how can he get through the worst of weathers or travel conditions that would hinder either relatives or us from traveling? When a relative says, I have some presents with you, which Santa left with me. If the presents were for Junior, why did Santa leave them at Aunt Nellie's?
Inconsistencies.
Yeah. Now, outside the families, there are other accomplices. Grandparents have lied to their children and had to confess. But now, repeat those lies to the grandchildren. Aunts and uncles lie to their relations as well as to their own children. And there are other accomplices outside the family. School teachers and principals arrange for an impersonator to visit the classrooms or have the children field trip to a store or mall to see him. The Postal Service collects letters to Santa and hires someone to answer those letters to fool the children. The U.S. Department of Commerce has issued a license for Santa to transport the gifts in a sled. Obviously, someone had to forge the signature on the application.
And don't forget, when the post office has the things and they stamp it North Pole, do they really send it to the post office in the North Pole?
I once asked my current work supervisor, when he was a kid, was he made to write to Santa? Did he ever get a letter back? Well, he said he did, but it was from an imposter. And at that time, he did not know anything about postmarks or stamps. And don't forget NORAD, the U.S. Missile Defense System.
Okay.
They make phony surveillances and on-the-air progress reports on Christmas Eve about Santa's sled allegedly being sighted here and there.
Okay. So they're playing into it. What their credibility is now shot with me.
Earliest man knew better than to lie, but deliberately chose to commit sin. Our parents deceived us about Santa. Our parents were deceived by their parents, who were deceived by their parents, and on and on and on and on and on.
So the cycle stops here. The cycle stops here!
Well, each generation of children grows up knowing better than to lie. But yet they deliberately choose to deceive the next generation of children. We can always afford to say to our children when they lie, I can't trust you, I don't believe you, I can't rely on you because you don't always tell the truth. We are no more deserving of our children's trust when we deceive them, when we tell them never to do so.
Hypocrites!
Yeah, we involve our children in fantasies like Santa. Yet, we insist the children be concerned with reality only. It has previously been stated that we make Santa Claus a compulsion, not an option for our children. We impose him on the children without giving them a choice. Yet we object to children's emulating fictional characters or making up things like imaginary playmates or fanciful stories. There is a difference between fantasies that are come upon by chance or self-created, like I did with Spectre and the Ghost King, and fantasies that are outwardly imposed and fostered as reality. Other examples of that are the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy. But then what happens? After a while, the grown-ups turn the tables. They do not allow the children to concern or involve themselves with anything that isn't real or the truth, because we say that to do so is to indulge in escapism. When my parents turned the tables, I was not allowed to read comic books, novels, or fairy tales, or watch TV cartoons, movies, series, or specials, or play video games, because the contents of all those sources were fictional.
So, but you still were able to watch Underdog, and you were still able to watch some stuff, right?
Well, see, this is the problem. Let's everybody think about when we were in school, or if we're still in school right this minute.
Okay.
We have to read many fictions. We have to concern ourselves about non-existent people and their lifestyles. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we have to go farther with essays or book reports, but we still know the accounts are fictional. We are not made to believe they are real. That's where numberless sources, especially grown-ups, cross the line by going too far with Santa Claus and his supposed doings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see people like, your kid reading Ethan Frome for school, and then somebody smacks that book out of his hand. Don't read that book! It's fiction! Parents, huh?
Well, being barred from anything non-existent created a problem all through school, because when I was assigned to read, well, I told you about reading fiction. When I was assigned to write fiction, I had to concern myself with or create non-existent characters and situations. But when I had to write fiction, I thought I could be as imaginative as I pleased. Instead, my parents, especially my father, would inspect my compositions and would not let me submit them unless the contents were 100% fact. One time I made a piece of artwork inspired by an assigned fiction reading. My parents destroyed the artwork.
What? What did you draw?
I said I made a piece of artwork. I didn't say I drew.
Oh, okay.
But whatever the artwork was, it was based on something fictional, and my parents wouldn't tolerate it. They destroyed it.
Oh, no.
I was not allowed to have interests or hobbies solely for enjoyment. Anything I involved myself in had to be intellectually challenging or practical for life. I had had fantasies imposed on me, which I had been made to think were real, only to be forbidden to be concerned with anything imaginary. I wasn't allowed to think, write, act, or speak as I pleased. What did adults think they were? Dictators to be obeyed blindly? So if it can happen to me, it can happen to numberless other growing children, past, present, and future.
So it's happening now. So people that are watching this right now, take stock upon what you're doing. Take stock upon your reactions and the way that you're raising your children now.
Now, we make our children sit in Santa's lap and confide in him.
Yeah.
Yet we also say, don't talk to strangers, which is what the Santa impersonators are. Right. And don't let strangers touch you.
Right. So they're letting the kids sit on the stranger's lap, letting them touch them, and tell them all their secrets. As infants, when children cannot yet speak up for or defend themselves, our children are physically handled, even hurt, by doctors and later dentists or all kinds of professionals, barbers, hairstylers, seamstresses, workers. Consider how the instant a baby is born, the doctor,
a stranger slaps it to make it breathe. When we take our babies to the doctor for their checkups, the doctor, a stranger, jabs them with needles. So we force our children to be left with strange adults and children when we leave them at daycare centers. Why must children sit in Santa's lap when he is not a parent, grandparent, or any other familiar figure? By the time I set up our children to greet Santa face to face for the first time, they have already undergone much physical handling, pain, and confrontation. We had put our children at the mercies and whims of strangers. Some of us are even so eager to have our children held by and photographed with Santa that we let a strange man pick up and cuddle our children when they are still babies, not yet able to talk. And television news has revealed that sometimes the babies are hardly more than newborns. Saying that children mustn't interact with strangers, yet compelling them to interact with Santa Claus, are very dangerous inconsistencies and double standards. We say that Santa brings the presents on Christmas Eve, but we do not allow our children to witness his arrival. Oh, Santa comes only when children are asleep. You better get to bed, or so Santa doesn't find you awake and pass you by. We do not allow our children to stay up and witness Santa's arrival because we cannot afford to be caught in a lie. And we get entangled in other lies, as explained before, as to how he can enter without a key, leave the gifts without making a sound, come and go even in adverse conditions, or leave gifts with people other than the intended recipients. Another fallacy of this sentiment is that we are letting a stranger into the house, and we teach our children never to do that.
So we advise everybody, and if you're a kid that's growing up here and you don't like what she's saying, or anybody else that doesn't like what she's saying, do the research. Do the research. Start, find out what's the real story, because, and talk. This could be a way for you to have a conversation about that with your parents. And
let me have that picture of St. Nicholas again.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, this is how he really looked. Now, when Clement Clarke Moore wrote that poem, A Night Before Christmas, that was when retail stores were starting to engage Santa impersonators, and if the poem was to be put in a book with illustrations, how was Santa supposed to look? Well, he ended up not looking anything at all like this. The obvious fictional Santa Claus image was created by 19th century American cartoonist Thomas Nast, and that fictional image was blown out of proportion and taken as gospel.
Not necessarily as gospel, but more as a sanitized commercial way that people could sell toys to kids and to the parents under the guise of Santa Claus.
Now we have some households, mine didn't, have our children leave snacks for Santa.
Okay.
Yet we frown on snacking and obesity.
Yeah, I left cookies, and I got a note back too. I got a note from Santa saying thanks for the cookies.
Obviously an imposter.
It was definitely, now that I look back on it, in my mom's handwriting with a drawing, because my mom drew, with that.
What, you mean you knew who the guilty party was?
Well, but I was just going with it because I got all these toys, so I was like, yeah.
Nowadays, when we are obsessed with dieting, losing weight, and staying slim, and imposing the same concepts on our children, we restrict or forbid altogether children to snack once in a while, especially on junk food. Yet we make a holiday tradition of leaving out goodies for Santa. if and when we feast abundantly between Thanksgiving and New Year's, we come out of it feeling ashamed and guilty and immediately resolve to lose weight to punish ourselves. Why then should we bother to cater to Santa?
And Santa is already big, so he's big boned. I mean, big, he's hefty.
If Santa were to eat all the snacks offered him by numberless households, he would consume countless calories and gain at least a couple of tons in the process in just one night. Also, if Santa were to eat the snacks offered in numberless households that way, he loses time, and we perpetuate the superstition that he delivers the presents worldwide in just one night.
So this is a conspiracy that is held by many people. Many hands are in this thing, and a lot of people are just in it for the presents.
Because we also look down upon obesity, we contradict ourselves by leaving snacks for Santa. We say that he is a fat man.
He's jolly. He's jolly.
Yet recently a website has been set up in which people petition Santa not to diet. The public wrongfully concerns itself on a fictional issue when we forbid our children to be concerned with anything other than reality.
While they're body shaming and all that stuff there.
Now, there was another example of improper concern about fiction in 1980 when the Dallas TV series aired the episode Who Shot JR?
Okay.
The public, grown-ups who enforced reality over fantasy on children, wrongly convinced themselves and their peers that a fiction was real. For months, they struggled and labored to solve the mystery. So expectedly, there were letters to the editor reprimanding the adult masses for their inexcusable obsession and hysteria with an imaginary incident. Leaving snacks for Santa and leaving the household free for his own intentions are further examples of improperly letting a stranger into the house.
Okay, so keep that in mind.
By fostering Santa Claus in the traditional manners, we do deeds and have our children do deeds that contradict divine law or morals and virtues that we and our children are expected to have. We and our children do things where Santa is involved that we say we must never do in other situations. These double standards we are guilty of make us slip backward in terms of moral and spiritual progress.
What can we do, Suzanne? What can we do?
Considering that we expect our children to honor thy father and thy mother, if we and future generations of parents continue the same age-old, sinful, or deceitful patterns, we will not be deserving of this honor by either our children or God. We must put Christ, not Santa, first in terms of priorities in attention for holiday-oriented traditions. We must be truthful to our children about the nature of Santa Claus. We have to let them know about the real St. Nicholas and how the fictional Santa is blown out of proportion, being made excessively important and fostering him wrongfully as a reality. We must not compel our children to take fantasies for reality when we can afford to turn the tables and prohibit chance or self-made fantasies. We must not make our children interact with strange people when we tell them never to do so. We must not make our children seek out, contact, or interact with Santa when we never pressure them to do likewise with other fictional characters. Have you ever heard of children being coerced into looking for or writing letters to or interacting with, well, Bugs Bunny or Elmer Fudd or Foghorn Leghorn, other, these popular cartoon characters.
All right, got one. What about Mickey Mouse? When people go to Disneyland, the people write letters, kids do things, and then they go there and take pictures with Mickey Mouse.
Well, the impersonators, who are supposedly the honest-to-goodness, real Mickey and Minnie Mouse, Donald Duck, Goofy, and so on, because they're adults, they have to wear costumes in order to look exactly like the characters that are much too big. So they make the fictional characters oversized.
They're larger than life.
Exactly. In reality, a mouse is only about this big. But look at how big your average Mickey Mouse impersonator is.
Yeah, any walk around Times Square shows, yeah. There's a whole bunch of impersonators out there impersonating a whole bunch of things.
Well, also I learned about long ago about in London. I don't know if it's just children or children and adults also writing letters to Sherlock Holmes.
Really? Okay, I have not seen this.
All right, we mustn't pressure our children to do likewise with other fictional characters. We and our children must not do things where Santa is concerned that we would never do in any other situation.
Okay.
We must not frighten our children by fostering Santa as an unseen but omnipresent record-keeping behavior monitor when children already are pressured and checked up on by other people they interact with constantly. In fact, it was just earlier this year that I learned of a monitoring object, which I was told has already been around for 10 years, something called Elf on the Shelf.
Ah, yes, Elf on the Shelf. Yeah, I've seen it.
All right. Now, here's Midnight again. Everybody remember her?
Yes.
Now, suppose she were an elf on the shelf.
Okay.
She would be put in a private space, such as a child's bedroom, and her eyes supposedly are cameras that monitor our every movement and relay the information to Santa Claus. That's that's sort of like the telescreens in Orwell's 1984.
Ah. Okay.
Okay, Midnight.
Yeah, we know you don't mean anything bad, Midnight. You're just being an example. Go ahead.
All right, now, look. Failure or refusal to heed these warnings in time to come and continuation of the aforementioned double standards when we frown on double standardizing will mean ever increasing numbers of sinful statistics, confessions to be made, and penalties to be paid. All those crowds, mobs, myriads of people over goodness knows how many generations, all having to answer to God with penalties to be paid in either this life or the hereafter.
Okay. Well, thanks, Sue. Is there any more you want to add, or we're good?
Well, considering, I remember I said I was very angry about my parents having deceived me because they were fanatics about telling the truth, and they had subjected me to the ordeals of behavior charts, being checked up on by teachers, relatives, clerics, professionals. I had my hands full already. I did not need another source of pressure at Christmas time.
Okay, so let's be chill with that. It's the holiday season, guys. Bring it back to, if you're into Jesus, bring it back to Jesus. Bring it back to peace on earth. Right?
I can't be sure if North America is the only part of the world that's so commercialistic or so insistent on make-believe. I know some other countries have Santa among them, but I hope they didn't blow him out of proportion.
All right. Well, we'll do the research and we'll see if we need to follow up. But I think
other countries have other Christmas fictional characters, but the children have to be advised that those characters are just fictional. They must not be passed off as reality.
All right. Well, keep that in mind. All right. Thank you so much, Suzanne, here. You've been watching Suzanne Beware of the Devil with Miss Suzanne Muldowneys. Round of applause. That's right. Thank you, Suzanne. Right.
I hope I covered everything. Did we get it all?
We got it, everything.
Good! Good! We got it all!
Right on.
Oh.